Help is just a click away with Shoreside Therapy's free 15-minute consultation. At Shoreside Therapies, they offer personalized therapy services that combine evidence-based techniques with genuine care and understanding. They provide various solutions to make the therapy process more accessible, including virtual appointments and assistance with insurance benefits. Their team of licensed therapists is dedicated to helping you build resilience and confidence while navigating life's challenges. Join Shoreside Therapies on your journey to finding inner peace and happiness. Go to shoresidetherapies.com for a free 15-minute consultation and discover the benefits of counseling. At Shoreside Therapies, again, shoresidetherapies.com, and schedule your free consultation right online. Welcome to the Wisconsin Wellness Podcast. I'm Laurie Groh, your host, mental health therapist, and practice owner. Each month, we'll showcase a central theme and provide weekly practical hacks, inspiring interviews, and valuable advice from wellness professionals. Our aim is to help you streamline your wellness and mental health journey. So let's start the show. Welcome to the Wisconsin Wellness Podcast. Today I have Linda Magnuson with me, and she is an Usui Holy Fire Master Trainer. Today we're going to be talking about how Reiki can help with grief. I am so excited to talk with you, Linda. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, Linda, for those of us that might not be so familiar with Reiki, could you share just a little bit of the background before we go into how we can use that for grief?
Sure. So Reiki is a Japanese hands-on healing technique, and it's for healing and stress reduction, and it works in a person's energy field. So our energy field heals on all levels. So that's your mental, emotional, and physical state. And you're working with universal life energy. So that is something so much greater than us, and it's the highest vibrational energy. And as a practitioner, I bring that down into the space for my client, and that life force energy, that higher vibrational energy, can kind of find that negative or low vibrational energy within my client and help move it along. We really want to have free flowing energy through our body that keeps us very healthy and vibrant and balanced. But when there is a big emotional trauma or a stress that has happened in the past, or a recent trauma, those things can get stuck in our body, or they can drain us or deplete our energy. So what Reiki does is it can help somebody through an emotional trauma or a loss by moving that stagnant and negative energy on, so the person can feel more healthy on all those mental, emotional, and physical levels.
Yeah, so it makes sense to me on how it could work. When we experience something traumatic or something difficult, our body does respond. It makes sense to me that something could be held there as well. There's a physical component to somebody's feelings, right? Or if somebody's feeling an emotion, you can locate that emotion in the body.
Yeah, so especially with grief, a lot of people, you hear the expression of a heartache. Your heart, your chest physically hurt when you lose somebody, or even thinking about, even the thought of losing your child, right? That makes you sick to your stomach. People will say that expression. Yeah. Or you have like this density, this rock that's just sitting in your gut. You can feel a physical response to that. That's the kind of energy that I'm talking about, what we're trying to move through or move past or help lighten up. Another good example of it is walking in a room and two people were arguing. You didn't hear the argument, but you felt it in the air. Although we can't see this energy, it's always there. It's always fluctuating. It's within us. It's all around us. So what Reiki is raising up the vibration or lightening up that heavy load.
You described that so well, of walking into a room after an argument and you can feel it. You can kind of just feel that energy shift. I talk about that too with The fact that I'll be working with clients, and I do in person and I do video as well. You can feel energy a bit through video counseling. You can definitely feel that. You can feel it when you're doing a phone call. I do feel a significant difference when I'm in the room with somebody. And that isn't to say that therapy in itself works better or worse in those situations, but you can definitely feel somebody's anxiety. You can feel somebody's depression. You can feel somebody's anger when you're in the room. You can sense it. And that might not be true for everybody, but as a therapist in particular, that's part of the skill. Thinking about it in that way, I think is really useful of it's there, whether we want to fully acknowledge it or not. And there's different ways that we have evidence that energy is there. And from what you're describing, it sounds like it's the process of lifting up the negative energy that might be stagnant or stuck in someone.
Yep. Yes. So what Reiki does is that it kind of lifts off that heavy energy or moves it along. And there's kind of different ways people experience that. I mean, no session is alike in that way because everyone holds their trauma and their emotions in different ways. Through my training, we had to do a lot of hours and it was in person. Although I don't put my hand on a person, I'm usually about 3 to 6 inches above them. Just by doing that over and over again, you become aware of those subtle shifts. It's part of the job to be able to pick up on those different energies. Although a person might not be telling you something, their body is telling you something, even their body language. But we go even a step further into really tuning into their energy field, which we all have around us. I call it scanning the body, and I'll kind of go over an area, it might be that heart area, and it just sinks. And I can just feel this sink kind of feeling. Or even if I go over somebody's solar plexus, the chakras in the body, with Reiki, we work a lot with that. And a lot of different emotions are really stored in our gut, that gut feeling, that gut instinct. Everybody has the ability to sense these energetic shifts. But through life, a lot of people have turned it off because, sometimes you'll get this gut feeling, but then your brain kicks in and wants to logically try to rationalize it, right? And we forget about the gut feeling, and then our brain takes over and we move on or we do something else. And then we might, go back and kick ourselves for not listening to that gut feeling, right? So that's kind of the energy that I can feel during a session. And you're absolutely right. It's so much more profound in person, but definitely can work over the phone or just through words, even through writing or an email. Definitely different ways to feel it. But in person is, in my opinion, for Reiki, the best way to get the benefit from Reiki. Although a lot of people do it over Zoom and they do it remotely. When you're in person, I feel like you really can tap into an individual and I can really get a good sense of what's going on within them without them even saying anything.
Wow. And Linda, I didn't even realize that somebody could do it over the phone or via Zoom. So that's interesting just to hear that that's possible.
Yeah, during COVID, there was a lot of that going on because obviously there was a lot of people in need of energy work, but with a lot of the restrictions or what they were going through, maybe they were immune compromised and they couldn't be around people. There was a lot of Reiki that happened, and even distant Reiki. There's training on how to do Reiki for a future event. You have to really open your mind to the idea of some of that. It's energy. It can't be created or destroyed. There's no real timeline to energy like we think of time. But when you think of energy and things that are bigger, there is no linear timeline. When you're dealing with energy, I can tap into a childhood trauma or a loss that has happened many years ago, that can feel like it just happened. Or if someone is reliving this nightmare of a past trauma every night, during that nightmare, they are essentially reliving that and their body is responding as that. Their fight or flight kicks in and their heart starts to beat faster. And so our bodies aren't really made to be this linear timeline. So energy work can definitely work for past trauma or recent. And then, like I said, people can even kind of send it into the future if they want like good things to happen, or if you think about manifesting your dream. So it can work in many different ways.
Yeah. So, Linda, you brought up the grief piece, and I know we wanted to talk a bit more about that. Tell us more on how Reiki can help with somebody that's grieving, somebody that's experienced a loss.
Yes. So during Reiki, one of the main components is to provide a safe space. When a client comes and sees me, that space has to be a space of healing and it has to be very welcoming, and the client needs to feel that is a safe space. They feel nurtured so they can kind of sink down into the session. When people come in, usually they're emotional or they're busy, they came rushing from their jobs. So I usually start out with a guided meditation, and that just kind of helps them calm down. And once body is calm, it can start to process emotions, right? And that's just how our bodies are designed. When we're in that fight or flight, we're not thinking clearly, we're not able to process anything. Our immune system is compromised. All those things with a constant grief or anxiety or sadness, it just starts to really take a toll on our body. So when you come in for a Reiki session, the first thing that I do is I want to just get you relaxed enough for me to start my work. Once the client is relaxed, I consciously bring in that higher vibrational energy, that universal life force energy, and I start to bring it in through the client. And a lot of clients, and I don't talk at all, but they'll start to feel this. And what Reiki can do is it helps the client acknowledge emotion. Some people with grief, they've suppressed it for so long, right? They haven't released any of it. It might be in the form of anger or denial, shock, guilt, a loss of control. There might be a lot of shame around a grief or a loss. So those emotions, as I start to work, they start to surface. And you want to make sure that the client feels safe to release some of those emotions. You know, they need to feel that they can cry. They need to feel that they are feeling loved and nurtured and able to express these emotions. The thing that will happen is usually I'll work for about 30 minutes on a client, and I'm just consciously bringing in that love and light energy. And as I'm doing that, a lot of clients will finally be calm enough to gain some clarity of mind. So, although we don't talk a lot during the session itself, afterwards, a client will tell me, you know, I get it now. It clicked in me. I understand the dynamic of the relationship that I lost, or I understand that I gained a sense of balance. Things like that, people like to share with me at the end. It's almost like these aha moments that they were in such a state of grief that they can't focus. But once you're able to allow them to, once I'm getting some of that negativity off of them, that heaviness off of them, then they actually like see the light, or they can see something bigger or process something a little bit better, which is, you know, how you move past grief. It could be the loss of a friendship, losing a home, even like a natural disaster, something like that, some very traumatic thing where they lost a sense of self, or just even feeling like they weren't the person that they used to be. I always hold a lot of space for people who are grieving the loss of the older version of themselves. But as we move through life, we change and we grow, and people come and people go. And although we might be happy in the direction we're going, we're still losing a piece of ourselves. And so that's another really interesting energetic at a chord that that gets cut when I'm working with clients.
That comes up in my sessions as well, where somebody might struggle with the idea of what they once wanted as a goal. And they're in a different place and want different things, but it's almost as if they want to honor that previous version of themselves that maybe was 16 or younger, of this is what my dream was at that point. And so I think I need to do that still, even though that might not be what success means to them any longer. It might not be what actually makes them happy. They might see themselves as, maybe this comes up with somebody that might be more of an introvert, but tried to be more of an extrovert because that's what they thought made sense for them of, oh, I need to be this. And so there can be a loss just in what somebody has expected their life to be. And that can be really hard to move through and let go of.
Right. And I think, like you said, the word honoring that old goal. I always tell people, for me, I do a session. It's a very relaxing session. I'm just walking around the person, I'm moving energy, but I'm not talking at all until the end part of the session. Then we start a dialogue and we start to talk about what they felt, what I felt. And a lot of it is reminding the client, or a lot of times they just kind of come to it themselves on their own after the session, is this isn't, our life is a journey. That old goal got them to where they were in a positive way somewhere along the line. It isn't that they failed at this or they failed at that. It's this process of learning and growing and this journey of becoming, and really looking at the positives in that and focusing on that higher vibrational energy rather than getting tied up in that stuck energy, right? That's kind of my job, is to get them out of that loop they're stuck in or pull the heavy energy out of them so they can see that bigger picture and be proud of what got them to that point, even their failures, right?
Right. So in that grief work, then it sounds like that beginning part it sounds like it's a point of transition where somebody's maybe letting go of the rest of the day. They're coming into a meditation type practice, and then you work with them in shifting that energy. Would somebody, and then when they're afterwards, that they tend to talk after? Is that typical after a session where there's a little time after, or does that depend on the person, the situation?
Most practitioners will set time aside for discussion afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I will do 30 minutes of Reiki where there is no talking. They're just relaxing. I do our guided meditation. There's kind of relaxing music in the background. They might cry and have some different shifts, but there's not a lot of talking until about 35 minutes in. And then that's the point where I can do some exercises with them. One of the exercises that I like to do, if they say, oh, when you were working on me, I really felt a lot of movement in my heart chakra, or I felt like I couldn't move that energy. There's like, it feels like an elephant sitting on my chest, right? And one of the exercises that I like to do is we identify and recognize that energy. And the more that we can bring awareness to whatever is stuck there, the more we're able to move it along. So usually I'll have the client close their eye. Usually they're already closing their eyes, but we identify it. I say, if it had a color, what color would it be? If it had a shape, if it had a texture, is it like black tar, or is it this heavy rock? And we just start to bring it into a picture in their mind of what that energy that's been there so long, what is it like? And once we identify it and bring it up, then we kind of tie in like what emotions came up. Did you get like a hint of anger, or was it sadness, or are you not really sure? Some people, they have such a block up because it was so traumatic. that it's hard for them to even get to that point. So at that stage of the session, what I'm trying to do is move that heavier stuff along that I wasn't able to do without them with me. I can move things, but when a client helps do that with me, together we can really do a lot of work. And it doesn't always happen in one session, especially with a loss or grief or something that's been there a really long time. It can take multiple sessions to chip away at it and get it to move along. After those exercises, I'll give them some homework. I usually call it homework. Once they leave this session, I don't want anyone to feel like, okay, I can't work on this until I have another session. There's always things to do at home that they can work on to move it along. But when they leave the session, I always ground them down. That's something you always end the session with. Once you get that energy moving and everything flowing, you really want to ground down before you leave. But they have that much more awareness to that energy now that maybe they were too afraid to do before on their own, or they were in such a state of grief that they just didn't even have clarity to wrap their mind around that spot that energy is stuck, because their whole body is just so tired from that relentless presence of grief, right?
I would imagine that for some people coming in, that energy is so big and so consuming, and that their wish at that moment would be to have that pain taken away. Linda, could you share on what you do with that?
Right. They just want it all to go away, right? That's like something that you hear a lot. I can't deal with this anymore. I'm so tired of being sad, or I'm so lost. And unfortunately, that is how it feels. You feel completely lost and so exhausted that you don't know how to undo yourself from this. I tell them in a very delicate way, there is no magic cure. I cannot take that heartache away from you and you'll never feel it again. And I say it in such a way as, I don't want them to be like, well, this was a waste of time. But I always really stress that you have the power to get through this. You have the ability to get through this. Right now, you're just so weighed down, right? And that's why I'm here. I'm here to help lift off some of that weight for you. And once you start getting that weight lifted off, once you start getting that negative energy out, you'll have more room for that positive energy inside. And you'll have more clarity to be able to find the positives in life again. You'll want to go and do something rather than sleep all day, because you'll be unburied just a little bit more. And the more that we can move that and work through that, the better you will feel. And you're not like this forever. There's always a way to unbury yourself and to overcome this grief. You just, at this point, are in a state of complete exhaustion, but this isn't a forever thing. It doesn't have to be forever,
Yeah. I think you're right, Linda, where people do. I mean, it's natural to want that magic to occur, right? And I think it's so important, like you said, going over the expectations of what this actually can do, which is, it sounds to me like it starts to free somebody up to feel the other things in their life.
Yes, and especially if something a recent loss, they are talking about it all day long to their family and friends. They are doing the paperwork. There's a lot of paperwork when somebody dies. You have to do all the funeral arrangements. You have to cancel their appointments. There's just so much, and they're just living it all day long. And when they come in, I provide that safe space. Some people almost need this permission to just exist without having to do anything. A lot of healthcare workers have that. They have to be taking care of somebody else and taking care of all the things. And with grief, they feel like, oh my gosh, I have to make sure that this person's okay and this person's okay. And they just kind of bury themselves. And so when they come in and they're like, wow, this time is for me. And I tell them that too. This time is for you. Any thoughts that come up, just push them aside. Just, just allow yourself to be here and feel the feeling. A lot of people start to feel sad and they push that down. I've had a lot of male clients in our society. They're taught not to cry, to be the strong one, to don't show emotion, that sort of thing. But that catches up to them, and then it will start to become a physical ailment if that energy is just lodged in there all the time. So just allowing somebody to just feel their feelings in this safe environment, that alone is huge for people.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't allow that for themselves ever at any other time. That's another really big piece of a Reiki session. It's like they're giving themselves permission, and I'm giving them permission to take care of themselves. And then they really see how just doing that for 1 hour, I'll get a lot of feedback like, oh my gosh, like I don't remember the last time I did anything for myself, or I feel so much better and all I did was lay there, like it's kind of funny how we've become such a busy society that even something like grief, we just keep being busy and we never actually allow ourselves to feel and exist and acknowledge and grieve. So yeah, that's a big part of the session too.
Yeah, Linda, such a good point is that the grief becomes then something else to manage, or I need to take care of a bunch of people. I need to take care of my loved ones during this, and often forgetting about ourselves through that time. And so it's offering not only moving that energy and lifting up some of the energy, but it's also just that permission to do so that can be so powerful. So, Linda, I know our time is coming to an end, so I'm curious on if there's anything that you could offer our listeners as far as what they could do to help them through the grief, through grieving.
Yeah, I am a firm believer of words and writing. I mean, that's a big one. And that's something that really helps people, even if they experienced a loss long ago, or if it's a recent loss, just writing out a letter as if you were writing it to that person. Everything you want to say, or maybe you didn't get to say, or maybe there was a falling out. A lot of emotions are held around different things that had happened while that person was alive and that they weren't finished. They weren't resolved. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can be carried on and it can be moved. So even just writing that letter to that person is moving energy along. It's processing those emotions that we feel that we never got a chance to express. But just by writing it out, you are expressing it.
Yep.
And, depending on what you believe spiritually, I do believe that once we pass, we're all part of something bigger. And we all have a piece of that inside of us. And as we move on to whatever happens after our soul leaves this body, when you're writing that letter, though those loved ones that have passed can feel it, they can hear it, they feel that energy behind those words, and it really helps people move along. Another thing I find is we can really honor somebody who's passed by recognizing all the wonderful things that they did leave behind. Even if it's on social media, talk about all the wonderful things that they did or all the memories, really focusing on that love and light energy, something more positive, really helps people move past some of the grief too, knowing that they can carry on their legacy just by sharing those memories and keeping them alive and telling them to their kids. That's really healing for a lot of people to focus on that rather than on the negatives or the loss of or the sadness. I mean, how lucky were we to have that person for as many years, or as even if it was a few years, like how lucky are we to have known such a great person? So lastly, I think too, with grief, a lot of people, like you said, they just get overwhelmed with the sadness.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to find the good in things at that moment. I mean, I've lost my mom, my dad, a sister. I'm 36. I'm not that old, but I have a lot of experience with loss. I've lost each family member in a very different way. And I found that it's easier to lose people now because I've created this habit of finding the little things in life that bring me joy. I mean, even right now, I'm looking out my window and my lilac bushes are bloomed and they're beautiful. And it's been just raining all day long. I can't get out in my garden. It's my day off. But oh my gosh, those lilacs are just so vibrant. They're beautiful. I love them. Just making it a habit to look at those wonderful things during the day, even when the day is crap, even when you just lose somebody. If you really just find one tiny thing, like, oh, that bird was really pretty that just landed over there in the yard and then flew away. Just finding the little things. And the more we do that, the easier it becomes. And it just keeps us a lot lighter. It keeps our energy flowing and it helps us move some of that negative energy along when it does strike or when it hits us. It's easier to cope with.
Those are really, really useful, Linda. I think that idea of finding something within your day that you can feel that positive energy towards can be so beautiful. It is a way to connect with the ones we've lost as well. I am here and I am making the most of my time. And there's something connective about that as well. With writing, like you said, it is a form of energy, right? And I think from my experience too, people feel so much better after writing and writing their thoughts and feelings, especially when it's towards someone, because they've been keeping it to themselves. Ultimately, it's being stored within them, and writing that out is really showing yourself, I don't need to keep this in here anymore. Maybe some of it I want to, but I don't need to keep it. It's out here. It's off of me. It's now written down and it's expressed.
Yeah.
So wonderful talking with you today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us today on the Wisconsin Wellness Podcast. Remember, your well-being is a priority, and we're here to help support you every step of the way. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring content on health and wellness. You can also join our Facebook group to connect with Wisconsin wellness providers by clicking the link in our show notes. Take care of yourself and remember that your well-being is a journey, not a destination. We look forward to you joining us again next time on the Wisconsin Wellness Podcast. Until then, stay well and stay inspired.